I used to think rural life was safe, quiet, peaceful, but I learned the hard way. Silence can hide the darkest things. This happened in Germany in the year 1922. The place was called Hinterkaifeck, just a lonely old farmhouse surrounded by endless forest, far enough from neighbors that screams could die in the night without anyone hearing. 6 of us lived there. My wife Kazilia, our widowed daughter Victoria, her 2 children, little 7-year-old Cecilia and 2-year-old Joseph, and finally Maria, a maid who had just arrived for her very first day. It should have been a fresh start for her. Instead, it became her grave. At first, it was just little things. One morning, I went outside after a snowfall. The ground was untouched, a clean sheet of white. But when I walked toward the barn, I noticed something that stopped me cold. Footprints. They came out of the woods, a straight line across the snow, ending right at our back door. I looked for where they went after, but there were no prints leading away. Whoever came had never left. That night I couldn't sleep. The wind howled through the cracks of the old farmhouse and I lay awake listening. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Not in the halls, not outside, but above me, in the attic. I got out of bed, lantern in hand, my wife following nervously behind me. We searched the house, the barn, the stable. Nothing. Just creaking wood and shadows stretching in the lantern light. I told myself the house was settling. Old houses do that. But the next day, the keys went missing, and a newspaper turned up inside the house that nobody in my family subscribed to. I asked the neighbors if it was theirs. They all shook their heads. The sense of being watched only grew stronger. I confided in a few people. I told them I thought someone might be living in our walls, watching us, but they laughed it off, said I was paranoid. I considered leaving, but this was my land, my house. I was stubborn, too stubborn. And then came March 31st. The animals were restless that night. Their cries carried through the cold air, low and panicked. I went out to the barn to check on them, lantern swinging in my hand. I remember stepping inside, the shadows between the hay bales deepening around me. I never walked back out. One by one, my family followed. My wife, wondering where I'd gone. Victoria, worried about the noises. Even little Cecilia. Each time the killer waited, a mattock, a heavy farm tool like a pickaxe, swung down. Skull after skull crushed, their bodies dragged and stacked beneath hay. Inside the house, the maid Maria was killed in her bedroom, still surrounded by unpacked belongings from her very first day. She hadn't even had the chance to settle in. And finally, Joseph, just 2 years old. They found him in his cot, lifeless. It should have ended there, but it didn't. The nightmare had only just begun. For days, nobody noticed. It wasn't unusual in rural Bavaria for families to keep to themselves. My granddaughter missed school. Victoria missed choir practice. Mail piled up, but neighbors thought nothing of it. A repairman even came by to fix the engine. He later said he didn't see anyone, but he thought he heard movement inside. He did the repair, left his invoice, and walked away. At night, smoke rose from the farmhouse chimney. The dog barked endlessly, tied up in the barn. The animals were fed. The fires were lit. Whoever killed us stayed. Imagine it. Someone living in your house, surrounded by the corpses of the family they had just murdered, eating your food, sleeping in your bed, while your bodies lay only a few steps away. On April 4th, 4 long days later, neighbors finally came to check. They pried open the barn and found us, my wife, my daughter, my granddaughter, and me. Our bodies piled under hay, skulls shattered. Inside, they found Maria in her room, Joseph in his cot. The little girl, my granddaughter, had torn chunks of her own hair out before she died, which meant she had lived long enough to suffer, long enough to know. The police swarmed the place. 100 suspects were questioned. At first they thought robbery, but money and valuables were still there, untouched, nothing stolen. So they looked closer at us. I had been strict, domineering. People disliked me. They whispered about things between me and my daughter Victoria, things I won't even repeat. Court records showed I'd once been convicted for assaulting her, though the truth was murky. Some claimed Joseph, the baby, wasn't my grandson at all, but my son. Others suspected Victoria's rumored lover had taken revenge, but every lead fell apart. The footprints in the snow, the sounds in the attic, the missing keys. It all suggested something far worse, that a stranger had slipped into our home, hidden above us for days, maybe weeks, watching, waiting. The police tried, but forensic science in 1922 was crude. Neighbors contaminated the scene before evidence could be preserved. The murder weapon disappeared, later found rusting away on the farm. Autopsies revealed the brutality of the attacks, but no clue to who swung the mattock. Time passed. The case grew cold. In the 1950s, investigators reopened it. Nothing. In 2007, German police re-examined everything with modern technology. They claimed they had a prime suspect, but that suspect was already long dead. Out of respect for living relatives, they never released the name. To this day, it's officially unsolved. The farmhouse was torn down in 1923. Today the land is empty, just a small memorial stone marking where we died. Visitors say it feels unnaturally quiet there, like the silence is heavy, pressing in, as though the house itself remembers. And here's what haunts me most. Imagine lying in bed at night, hearing footsteps in your attic. You search, find nothing, but the noise comes again. Imagine finding footprints in the snow leading straight to your back door, but no prints leading away. Imagine knowing deep down that someone is living in your home, someone you can't see, someone patient. For us, it wasn't imagination, it wasn't fear, it was real. The evil that came to Hinterkaifeck wasn't a ghost. It wasn't some demon. It was human, flesh and blood. Someone walked out of the woods that snowy night and decided 6 lives would end. And then they lived among our corpses, feeding the animals, lighting the fire, sleeping under our roof, and they were never caught. So I'll leave you with this. Next time you hear footsteps in your attic, next time you see footprints in the snow outside your door, ask yourself, did they ever leave? Most people don't believe in hauntings. They laugh at ghost stories. I used to do the same. Until the night the knocking started. It was the late 1970s in Enfield, North London. Our family lived at 284 Green Street. The house was small, old, nothing special. My dad had left. My mom raised 4 of us alone. Life was already tough. But something else decided to move in. It started in August of 1977. My sister Janet was 11. I was 13. We were whispering before bed when she froze. "My bed is shaking," she whispered. I had told her to stop joking, then I heard it too. A slow, deliberate knock from inside the wall. We called Mom. She came in annoyed. Then 3 heavy thuds shook the wall. Her face went pale. That was the first night none of us slept. The next night, it escalated, knocking from different walls, toys sliding across the floor. One of Janet's marbles lifted into the air, then dropped, and then the drawers. A heavy chest of drawers scraped forward inch by inch, pushing Janet toward the wall. Mom threw her weight against it, but it kept moving. like someone invisible was shoving it. Only when she screamed, "Stop it," did it freeze. She called the police. 2 officers came, checked the house. Nothing. Then a wooden chair slid across the floor, right in front of them. One officer even wrote a sworn statement, but they still left. Said there was nothing they could do. Word spread. Neighbors came by. Some heard the knocks. The Daily Mirror sent reporters. A photographer laughed until a Lego brick flew across the room and hit him in the face. It drew blood. His smirk vanished. The more people came, the worse it got. Plates shattered. Curtains twisted themselves. Beds shook violently. Neighbors claimed to hear screams when no one was home. And then the voices began. It started with Janet. She was just a kid. But when she opened her mouth, a deep man's voice came out. Gravelly, guttural. At first we thought she was faking, until it went on for hours. Her throat bled. Doctors said no child could do that. The voice said its name was Bill Wilkins. It claimed it had died in our house, blind, from a hemorrhage, in a chair in the living room. Investigators checked. There really had been a man named Bill Wilkins. And yes, he had died in that exact chair. How could Janet know that? The nights were terrifying. Janet's eyes rolled back as she thrashed in bed. Sometimes she levitated. I saw her body rise into the air, arms spread out, hair floating. Other times she was hurled across the room. We were terrified of her and terrified for her. The Society for Psychical Research sent investigators, Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair. They lived with us for weeks. They documented over 2,000 incidents. Knocks, flying objects, photos of Janet suspended in midair. They spoke to the voice. It answered questions with details no one else could know. Skeptics showed up too. They caught Janet faking little things, bending spoons, tapping on walls. She admitted it. But no trick could explain levitation, or a dead man's voice answering questions for hours. The tabloids called it the infield poltergeist. For us, it wasn't entertainment, it was survival. I remember one night vividly. Janet sat calmly on her bed, then her head snapped back. The voice rasped out of her, "I'm not Janet. I'm Bill, and this is my house." When asked how he died, the voice growled, "I went blind. Then I had a hemorrhage. I died in that chair downstairs. That was the night my mom broke down sobbing, because she knew it was true." The haunting lasted almost 2 years. From 1977 to 1979, our lives were chaos. Furniture flipped. Religious icons were hurled across rooms. The knocking never stopped. By the end of 1979, it slowed. The voices faded. The objects stopped moving. Janet went back to being a girl again, but she was never the same. None of us were. Skeptics still call it a hoax. Believers point to the witnesses, neighbors, police, reporters, investigators, and the recordings of Bill Wilkins' voice. I can tell you this: you don't forget watching your sister float into the air. You don't forget hearing a voice tell you it died in your house. And you don't forget the sound of knocking in the dark. Hollywood eventually made a movie about it. But the truth was worse. Not in the big moments, but in the little ones. The knock that answered a question. The toy that moved by itself. The voice that whispered your name when the room was dark. Years later, Janet said, "It stays with you." The fear never really leaves. She was right, because the haunting didn't end, it just got quiet. Quiet like something waiting. Even now when I visit my mom, like I feel it at the bottom of the stairs, that heavy presence, the memory of those knocks, and I wonder, like, is the house really empty or is it just resting?